Elise here at Bowman Library with a whole new Teen Book Spotlight. So for this week, we are taking a whole week to talk about one of my favorites. And if you've watched enough of these, you know how much I love sharing, talking about nonfiction. And I think nonfiction a lot of times gets this bad rap that it's boring because everything's true, and no, that is not the case with nonfiction. Now, granted, there are some that probably do fall into that category, but we have 6 amazing nonfiction titles we're going to take a look at today. And I promise you, they're well worth the read. So let's get started. Our first one is Flowers in the Gutter. So this is all about how the Nazi Party started to rise to power and eventually they took control of Germany. There were certain expectations that the Nazis had for its citizens of the country. And for teenagers, it was to join this group called Hitler Youth. But there came to be these groups of individuals that they did not agree with the Nazi Party. And they decided that they were going to form their own group. And these groups kind of sprung up all over the place, and they became known as the Edelweiss Pirates. This book tells that story about the Edelweiss Pirates through the lens of 3 members. There's Jean, Gertrude, and Fritz. And they each have their own story, their own history, and their own reasons why they joined these groups and why they decided, they were going to take on Hitler and everything that the Nazi Party stood for. You will find yourself reading with amazement and in horror about when you read about what they did and the consequences that they were forced to live through because of their choices and actions. You may find yourself asking what you would do if you were in their shoes or in a situation similar to the one that they found themselves in. This is filled with primary sources, there's photographs, there's journal accounts, there's newspaper articles, and there's more. This book takes a look at a group that takes place during a time in history that they don't get the recognition that they should. This is Flowers in the Gutter. Our next one is the Freedom Summer Murders. So it's 1964 in the Neshoba County, Mississippi, and there's this struggle taking place. Black individuals have the right to vote, but there are many people who don't want them to eat that right and then use that right. So that summer, there's these 3 young men, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner. 2 were white, 1 was black, and they went down to this county in Mississippi to try to get individuals to register to vote. Instead, one evening they disappear, no one can find them, and then 2 months later, their bodies appear, and they've been brutally murdered. As this investigation gets started, it quickly becomes apparent that they were kidnapped and murdered by the Ku Klux Klan in order to stop them from registering black individuals from voting. And then what happens after that is this long road to justice, 41 years long to be exact. This true crime book on an event that was more than just a murder is one that will have you wondering, why did it take so long for these 3 individuals to receive justice, and what needs to be done differently today? This is the Freedom Summer Murders. An Indigenous people's history of the United States for young people. So this history book takes a look at the history of the United States through the lens of an Indigenous perspective. So this goes back before the Europeans first arrived, and you will read all about how their lives were changed with the arrival of the new colonists and the policies that were both brought by them and then developed by them as well. And it led to this strategic removal of Native peoples from their land. And this land was rightfully theirs. This book then moves through the rest of U.S. history, touching on key events, which we know, and then there's others that we do not know, and we should know them. The author pulls no punches. The author, she doesn't sugarcoat anything, but how the actions and the events by individuals and in groups and the government in history dramatically changed the lives of the people that were already here, and not in a positive manner. So it's just filled with newspaper articles, there's photos, there's paintings, there's quotes, there's maps. and there's more, and you will find yourself reading a very different version of our history than what we've been taught, and it will lead you to see things quite differently than what you did before. I highly recommend this read. It's extremely eye-opening. If you're anyone like me, when I read it, I found myself really thinking a lot differently about our history and how it's been taught to us. This is an Indigenous peoples history of the United States for young people. The other F word. So this is a collection of stories, poems, art, essays, and they're all written by 26 different authors, and it's one that celebrates the other F word, which is fat, fabulous, and fierce. And it's all about celebrating fat individuals and body positivity, and for all of us to tell our own stories. Now, this isn't just meant for fat individuals. Everyone's in all different shapes and sizes, and everyone needs self-acceptance. And this is what this book is all about. There's some fiction, there's some non-fiction mixed in, and this is all about becoming comfortable with who you are and in the person that you want to be. This offers support for you when maybe you're feeling down, or you want to celebrate your positive outlook with others. And it's all about, again, being this body positive and being fierce with who you are. This is the other F word. Brave Face, a memoir. So this is by Sean David Hutchinson. He's an amazing YA author, and so he has decided now to write a piece of his life in a memoir. And this is all about what it was like growing up for him, mainly around the age of 19, but some of it takes place in high school, some of it goes into the early college years. And this was when, at a time in his life, that he was severely depressed, and he was also trying to figure out if he was gay, but those two things, he makes it very clear, are not related. It's 1990s, he's growing up in the deep south, and as someone who thinks they may be gay is already difficult enough, then you throw in high school, emotions, stress, making life choices, and Hutchinson soon finds himself depressed, occasionally self-harming, and even considering suicide. You will be along with him on his journey as he comes to love himself, and he accepts this fact that sometimes being okay is just being okay, and that's totally fine. His blatantly honest sharing of his life is one that everyone can relate to in some way, shape, or form, even if you're not in the exact situation that he was in. But it's okay to know that you are who you are, and that's totally all good. This is Brave Face. And our last one for this week is The Miracle and Tragedy of the Dion Triplets. And this is by Sarah Miller. I love Sarah Miller. She wrote that amazing Born to Murder book that we talked about a while ago. She has this new one out that's about vaudeville twins, which is amazing. This one, no exception. What I love about this is it talks about something in history that I had never heard of before I opened this book. It's rural Ontario, Canada. It's 1934, and the first set of 5 babies born at one time and surviving happens for the first time in history. These 5 identical girls would become known as the Dion Quintuplets. And from that time on, they became something the press and the public became obsessed with. And they wanted to know everything, and they wanted this unfettered access to them. And believe it or not, their parents actually make them into a legit tourist attraction at the World's Fair. People paid money to go in and see these 5 girls behind a glass window and just watch them and observe them. Deciding that their parents were unfit, though, the Canadian government steps in. They decide they're going to remove the girls from the house, and they're going to place them in the care of the Red Cross. The Red Cross then takes time. They build this hospital that's going to be this great location for these girls to finish growing up and to be kind of out of the public's eye. But before they know it, the Red Cross then has started exploiting them as well, including selling things in a gift store based on them. This story is one that's told in chronological order and includes newspaper articles, journal entries, photographs, there's interviews, and more. And you'll be asking yourself every step of the way, like, where did things go wrong and who is really at fault? Like, their parents, the government, like, what can we learn from this, even in the day and age that everything is posted on social media? But what's the takeaway? This is the miracle and tragedy of the Dion quintuplets. So these are just 6 of the books that we have here at the library that are amazing nonfiction. Because I can tell you right now, nonfiction doesn't have to be boring. In fact, some of the best books I have read in the past year or 2 years have been nonfiction. So I encourage you to come on out, check out one of these, or ask. If there's something specific you want to read about, you want to just explore something else, we will help you find that perfect nonfiction book that is going to change your reading life. I hope you tune back next week. We have a whole new teen book spotlight, and I hope you have a great week.